vocabulary focus today, and we're going to work with these two words, make or do, which are so commonly confused, when we're speaking in English. So it can be really tricky to know how to use make or do, or when to use make and do, because in so many other languages, there's just one word which represents the two words that we have in English. So of course it can be difficult to decide which one to use. So the thing that I really want us to think about today, working with make or do, is that they're actually a great example of collocations. And collocations, if you remember, collocations are words which are frequently used together. And I think sometimes the word collocation can be a bit scary for students or a bit confusing, but make or do is just a great example of how common collocations are, and just to explain that they're not a scary thing or a complex thing, they're just a kind of word frequency thing, the way that words interact together. So usually, when we use make or do, if you confuse them, there's not going to be a big communication problem, right? So whoever's listening to you or reading what you've written will understand what you're trying to say, but it will sound a bit strange. And that's because we're not using that correct word pattern, which is what a collocation is. So we're going to look today at just some general rules about when to use make or do. Then we're going to look at some expressions and some common collocations. And then we're also going to think about how we can find collocations in a dictionary, and what's the best way to do that. And I'm just going to give you some effectiveness with that. And I'll also explain why it's important for you to know those collocations. So starting to, first of all, guys, with which we should use with some general rules, right? So if you're not sure, use these to help guide you. So when we are creating or constructing something, we usually use the word make, right? For example, I would make a cake, or make some coffee, or make some trousers, okay? So at the end of a process, I have a physical thing, that I have created. Do will be used for more general activities where you won't really have a physical thing at the end of that process. And you'll very often see it with words like something, nothing, anything, or everything. So for example, what did you do at the weekend? I didn't do anything yesterday. She's fed up with doing everything herself. She needs some help. Okay. Another good example of using do in that way, and one more. Are you doing anything interesting during the holidays? A good example of how we use do that way is that really common question, what do you do? What's your job? So we don't have a physical thing at the end. So basically, if you're not able to access or use a dictionary, if you're not sure which is the better option, the general rule is if you have a physical thing at the end of the process, use make. If it's more abstract, use do. However, there are, of course, lots of fixed phrases and fixed collocations that use make or do, and those actually don't really have useful rules that we can follow. And in this case, we just have to learn them, and we are going to look at a selection today, but just a reminder as well that the best way to learn collocations is to see them occur naturally, right? So when you see them is when you learn them. It's a bit like phrasal verbs as well. Don't try and go crazy learning millions of phrasal verbs. Look at the context, learn them that way. Okay, so here's my first little task for you to do, okay? I have got a selection here of phrases and collocations using make or do. I would like you to decide which is the correct one, do or make, okay? And I'd like you just to think about, with that example sentence, if you understand what the meaning is. So some of them are just collocations, others are expressions. So take a couple of minutes individually to decide what your answers are, and then we'll look through them. So let's have a look then at these in more detail. Yeah, you have to make a choice. And we're using make for our collocation here. You'll also quite often see make a decision as well, collocating. And more commonly as well, you'll also see decision with take as a really common collocation as well. But we don't do a choice, yeah, we make a choice. The next one is this expression here, some exercise will do you good. So if I say something will do you good, what I mean is that it's going to be good for your health or your mental state. And we'll quite often see that expression with the world or a world of good as well. Yeah. So it would read like going on holiday will do her the world of good, or will do her a world of good. It's a very common expression too. Really nice expression to use there. Can you make an exception for me? Okay. So if I make an exception, that means that I'm not going, I won't treat you according to the usual rules. Okay. Here's another example of that. We don't usually accept late applications, but in this case, we'll make an exception. Okay, the next one, guys, was it's a pleasure doing business with you. So if I do business, that's just the activity of making money by producing or buying or selling goods or providing services. Yeah. In a more formal register, the collocation is more commonly used with conduct business rather than do business. Yeah. So it's not a sensible way to conduct business. If I was writing an email to a client or if I was meeting a client in person, I would use this one over here. Okay. It's a pleasure doing business with you. Right, I find it easy to make friends. Now, this is an important collocation, guys. So this means that you establish a relationship or relationships based on mutual affection. And this is one of the few examples where mixing make or do does actually affect the meaning, and it affects the meaning quite differently. So if I say that I do my friends, okay, that means that I have sex with my friends. And it's quite a different thing to making friends, obviously. So just watch out with that one, please. Be careful. Can you do me a favor? Okay, so this is when you do something for someone. And there's actually lots of different collocations with the word favor, which are sort of connected to this, which are useful to know. So we would ask somebody a favor, okay? So for example, I felt nervous about asking Stephen a favor. You can owe somebody a favor. So that's when you think you have to do something for someone because they did something for you. For example, I owe you a favor for all the help you've given me. You can also return a favor. And this is when you do something for someone because they did something for you. So if I owe you a favor, I will then return the favor. Okay, so he helped me in the past and now he wanted me to return the favor. Okay, guys, I spend 40 minutes doing my hair in the morning. So if you do something that improves your appearance or someone else's appearance, and you'll also see it with things, for example, like do your nails or do your makeup. Okay, so it must take her ages to do her makeup in the mornings. This one here, I've made a big effort to go running every day. This is one which I very often hear used incorrectly. Okay, and that just means try. Yeah, so if you make an effort, you try. You don't do an effort. So if you aren't sure, guys, of what the collocation is for the word that you're looking for, the Longman Dictionary is a really, really brilliant resource for this, okay? But just a little tip. If you're checking for a collocation about make or do, don't check for make, check for the other word in that collocation. So in this case, we would be talking about the word effort, yeah? And I'll show you why, because if you are looking for make, there's going to be so much information there which is not specific to effort, okay? You have to do it the other way around. So let me just bring up the Longman Dictionary here and I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we put in make here, We have all of this incredible information about make, yeah? And it does also give us, so it will give us some examples of some collocations, but you'll see that these are things collocating the other way, right? So I've got details and register here. If you go all the way down, you've got linking words. Here's some other examples. Okay, so there's so much to do. And one of the issues with that is because of the frequency of the word make. We use it so often that there's so many different ways that we apply it. Now, if we look at effort, that's going to be quite different. It is a common word too, but it's not used as much as we use with make. And this is where you can go down and you'll find those collocations, okay, which are going to help you. So here we have make an effort, put effort into something, take the effort out of something, lots of examples, yeah? So if you're looking for extremely commonly collocated words like make or do, don't look at make or do, look at the other word in that collocation, and that's going to help you find the information you're looking for much more quickly. Just to summarize what we've talked about, collocations take time to learn, okay? And the more that you expose yourself to English, the more collocations you will be able to learn. So one of the very best ways you're going to develop your knowledge of collocations is reading, yeah? If you are studying with us, you will have access to our book group, which you should all be signing up for. And that's going to be one of the very best ways that you can work and develop and practice those collocations. But it's also just exposing yourself to English and using that language a lot. And the more you expose yourself and use language, the more you will learn and develop and be aware of these collocations. And it comes to a point where they just become kind of second nature. Yeah. If you're taking a Cambridge exam, English exam from the B2 and above level, so that's from FCE onwards, collocations is something which is frequently tested in your use of English papers in things like the multiple choice close or the open close as well. And it's also something that will very much affect the quality of your writing, because if you're using incorrect collocations when you're writing, it reads badly. Yeah, your written English doesn't look great. So they're very important if you're taking exams, because they're going to help raise your level and also help you answer some of those tricky use of English questions. Quizlet cards are a great way of recording these collocations. So when you find interesting collocations, make a note of them in your Quizlet set and keep testing yourself on them. And a good way to approach that would be, for example, collocations that you would find in formal letters, okay? Or collocations that you will find in essays, or collocations that you would find if you were giving a presentation, yeah? That's a really good way to organize collocations so that they are useful for you. So think about areas of English which you have to produce a lot, whether that's for your work, for example, in a meeting or in an email, or whether that's for an exam to do a specific task, and collect collocations in little Quizlet sets for yourself that you test yourself on, okay? But what I would also say is learn them as you meet them, yeah? If you sit down and try and learn all the collocations in English, that will not be a constructive way to learn. It will also be quite depressing because we have so many collocations, and it's not going to be helpful. So the same with phrasal verbs. As you meet them, learn them in the context that they're being used for. Yeah. And as always, practice makes perfect. So the more that you produce them, the better that you will learn them.